Then you came to a point when you realized, I'm ready to move out. The internet here sucks. I'm working full time online. It's way too freaking noisy here. The house is super small. You're in this little teeny bedroom, and you're like, I have to go find a place where I can move forward. And so, where was that place? Where did you end up going?
So ended up being in Clyde, an apartment there that was above a funeral home actually, which in some ways was great because it was the opposite of here. Here it's very alive, the funeral home, a little quieter. So it wasn't a very active funeral home, which was also nice. They had funerals every month or two. There'd be a funeral. Uh, so yeah, I moved to an apartment above a funeral home, and
In a neighboring town. It was just
yeah.
so funny because he went from this, like the guy, we did you in. You couldn't even go get a regular apartment. You're like, I'm going for the funeral home vibe.
Although that funeral home, most of the time it was quiet, but also the landlord slash funeral homeowner occasionally would he really liked me and he'd knock on my door and ask me to help him move bodies and stuff. It was very that part was a little weird.
I have that down here as a question. Tell us about the time your funeral home apartment landlord asked you to help him move a dead body.
Well, he would always have me help do stuff, water the plants and stuff, and that was fine. But I guess it just kept going the longer I was there, and he got more comfortable with it. And I don't know, if someone didn't show up that day or something, and he just knocked on my door and needed me to help him carry a body to get cremated. So.
And it wasn't even move the body to the other room. It was move
the
it
next
to
town
the hearse
over to
and drive with him to the other place.
Yep, to where they were gonna cremate it, or it was a little.
Gosh.
A good story, though.
It is a good story. And Saf is so nice that it's hard for him to say no.
Yeah.
So, I'll help you move the dead body to the next town. Oh, my gosh, that was crazy. All right, the story I remember about your funeral home is, do you remember when your little brothers, uninvited, because you were like, don't come to the funeral home, don't come to the funeral home, nobody come to the funeral home. Your little brothers, uninvited, came to the funeral home during a funeral. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Think about that for a minute. I'm going to give the start. I'm going to give the start because the boys have been playing basketball. So they're stinky, they're filthy, they're in gym clothes. I remember Joe had a headband on his head and they stink, and Ben had pulled up his sweatshirt all the way around his face and did it really tight so you could just see this much and stuck a basketball under his shirt. And so these guys are like, let's stop and see Saf. So they literally walk up to the funeral home and the door magically opens for them. And they're like, oh, thanks. And they walk into the middle of a funeral. That's what I remember. And I remember they didn't know what to do. Everybody looked at them, and then they ran upstairs to your upstairs apartment. So what happened when they knocked on that door?
So yeah, to get up to the apartments, you got to kind of walk through the funeral area. So It's not like its own separate thing. So it was fine. They showed up and we talked for a few minutes, but the big challenge was how they were going to leave, because no one really wanted to go back down through the funeral. So I remember, I think it was Josiah tried to climb out the second story window or something, and finally I talked him out of that, and they just went back down and left. But it was a surprise.
It was a surprise. I remember that you were working, so first of
Yeah.
all, it's not a happy thing. You told people not to stop there, and I remember you told me you didn't know what to do because you didn't really want them walking back through the funeral, so you continued to work. And I remember you said, all I could hear in the kitchen is they're opening cupboards and refrigerators and they're making themselves snacks, right? I remember you were like, what the heck? And then you said, when it got quiet and you didn't hear anything is when you got nervous. And you went out to your back balcony porch and looked, and there's Josiah hanging over the edge. We're going to jump down into the trash bin. Nobody will see us. It'll be okay, Saf. And you were like, get up here. Get up here. Is that about right?
That's probably about right.
That's a pretty good rendition. Oh my gosh. But they did make it out of the funeral home.
They made it out. That was one of the most awkward parts of living there, is when they would have a funeral.
Yeah.
I had that happen. I would try to just not go in and out when there was a funeral, but sometimes you wouldn't know. I remember, I think it was when Aaron Lemon's mom died. I didn't know that she had died, and I just went out to get groceries. I was like, hey, there's all these people I know having a funeral. So yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. But overall, you liked the funeral home. You liked the quiet. You liked it in town.
It was good for a time. Yeah,
it was good for a time. All right, but it was sometime after that you decided, I need to find a house.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rent anymore. I remember you're like, if I'm going to pay money, I'm going to put it into a mortgage. And you began house hunting. What was that procedure like for you? How long did it take? What did you find?
It took longer than I wanted, I guess, but actually I think overall went pretty quick. Once I decided I was going to do it, I looked at a few places, and none of them were quite right. I wanted one that was like kind of out in the area near where you live and everyone else lives. So I was looking for something in an area. Couldn't really find anything. There's just not that many houses that go for sale right in that area. So I started kind of expanding out and looking at other places and like Lyons and Wolcott and stuff. But then it turned out that a house like a mile away just randomly went up for sale, and it kind of went super fast after that.
Yeah, it's cool. And you're fixing it up the way that you want. It's a nice spot for you, isn't it?
I like it. Yeah, it is a good spot.
Yeah. Now, do you remember, now you're at the new house, you're at your permanent home, and do you remember when we had a family party and we separated, boys went to your house and girls came to my house, and we both had separate parties? Do you remember that? It was
I do.
a few years ago.
That was a few years ago. I do.
Okay.
Well, hopefully you're not going to ask me details.
Well,
I remember it happening. I don't know if I remember too many specific details.
You remember the parties happening in separate places.
Yeah.
Do you remember the girls decided, some girl decided that we're going to go try to spook the boys or scare the boys, and we got...
Were you throwing fireworks in my house or something?
We had fireworks, and we snuck up. How we snuck up to your house, I don't know. It's right there, but you guys had no clue. We went around back, and somebody opened the door and threw fireworks into your house, and we're throwing all fireworks outside. Do you remember that?
I do. I just remembered, I think Noah thought it was like a drive-by shooting because he just like jumped up and
he was
booked it. Most people were just like, what's going on? But Noah was like freaked out.
Right. And why was Noah freaked out? Do you remember?
I think it's when he was in Detroit, so he was used to hearing gunshots all the time and stuff.
Yeah. So he really thought it was a drive-by shooting, and he freaked out. So I felt kind of bad, but
that was pretty good.
It's a good memory. It's a good memory. All right. Do you remember just a couple of weeks ago? Okay, so that's a quick one. Well,
we'll see. My
okay. And we had a construction guy come to our house because he's going to fix Hannah's roof for us.
Yeah.
And we needed to give him a down payment. Yeah. And you hold the house money for us, right? Yeah. So, and we didn't know what to do because the guy was about an hour away, and he was here. He needed the down payment. So Hannah and I spent half a day trying to call and text Seth, couldn't get a hold of him, and finally Hannah's like, that's it, we're getting in the car, we're driving over. Mom, you're going in because he can't be too mad at you because you're the mom. Do you remember that day?
I remember that one clearly,
Do you remember that day clearly?
I do. I do.
All right, so I'll give you the story. So I went in, sneaky, right? Went down his hall, and they peeked around his door into his office, and he didn't even see me the first time.
I think I was in the middle of a live stream.
You were in the middle of a live stream. Oh my gosh! I could see Saf with the big computer. He's got the headphones on, and he's like, whatever. And I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? But I really needed the $2,000 for the down payment, so I got myself together and I snuck like this. Like, Saf, do you have $2,000? That's what I did. And this is what Saf did. Saf didn't move. He stayed in front of the computer looking at the people talking, and he just took his hand on the side and was like, telling me to get out. And I laughed.
It worked.
Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
Oh my God. What were your thoughts at that time? How did you feel when you saw my head sneak around the door asking for $2,000?
I was more surprised than anything. And then I wondered if something bad had happened because no one comes over and just interrupts me in the middle of live streams usually. So I thought it was something bad, and then I realized I think you texted me or something. I saw my phone. I was like, oh, just trying to get some money. We'll deal with that later.
Poor Saf. No rest for the weary. I'll tell you what. But Saf, thank you for being on our podcast. We're going to break this into two because we went long enough. But I have one last question.
Yes.
Can I be on your podcast, please? Just like
I'll think
5 minutes. 3 minutes. Just a guest appearance.
All right. Well, I'll see if I can figure out something.
I can be on his podcast, he said, right? That's what he said. Okay. All right. Well, listen, Saf, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on episode number 1, Reed Road Ramblings. All right, guys. See you next time.